What's up, everybody? Welcome to podcast now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Ghost of Yotei yet again, and an interesting little snippet from an article that was done a few days ago. And I want to focus on the parts that we're talking about the game's budget, because this is something, AAA games, and the industry is definitely going in the wrong way with this situation, right? But Sucker Punch seemingly is doing really, really good here, and I'm very impressed by it, and that's why I wanted to highlight it in a video. And look, eventually I think it's going to seep its way into the sales, because you say, well, all these games like a Spider-Man 2, that's always kind of, sadly, because I think that is overall a good game, but that becomes this poster child for the game cost way too much to make. And it's a perfect example of, you could sell 10, 15 million units and you could just barely break even or make a little bit of money, when that's insane. If you sell 10 million units of any game, you should be making boatloads of money. But for EA and for PlayStation and some Xbox games, right, Halo Infinite costs $500 million to make. When you have a game that costs that much, you'd have to do 10 to 15 million just to make your money back, and that's it. So Spider-Man has become kind of that, right? But Ghost is kind of the opposite. If you remember back to Ghost of Tsushima, you might remember that game cost very, very little. Now, generally, the first game of all of these franchises cost a little. God of War 2018 did not cost all that much. Marvel's Spider-Man, the 2018 game, also did not cost much. And Horizon Zero Dawn is probably the third example, in that kind of group. All of those games, I think, and maybe even The Last of Us Part 1, these games cost like $50 million or less. They cost very, very little money, but then you see the jump, right? Like Last of Us Part 1, I think was very cheap because it was still the PS3 gen. So Last of Us Part 2 is like over $200 million. Spider-Man to Spider-Man 2, massive, massive jump. God of War, Horizon, I think, jumped by like $150 million. So they jumped a huge amount. So there you go. There's your sales. You could sell Horizon Zero Dawn, could sell 3 million units and make money. And then, but if you did that with 2, it would be a disaster, right? So the ballpark estimate for Ghost of Tsushima was 60 million. And I actually don't even think it's all that much of a ballpark. I think that was kind of confirmed. And there was an interview done, with Sucker Punch a few days ago, and they talk about a variety of things. But in terms of the money situation, they say financials are pretty darn close. The man hours, the people, the actual people that are there, all of those things are very close and in line with Ghost of Tsushima. So what that means is the team is around 150 to 200 people. It takes the same amount of time, or it took the same amount of time to make Yotei that it took Ghost of Tsushima, and it costs roughly the same amount of money. Now, I'm sure it's going to go up a little bit, right? But they do say even that was the first word of their quote. Financially, it's very, very close. So this game probably doesn't cost over 100 million. And that's going quite a bit, right? To jump from 60 even to 100, that would actually be such a jump that I don't think that's going to happen. I think the budget is probably 75 million. And I think that sets them up really for success. It really does. It's what we have just constantly said over and over, right? You have this game be worth $200 million, or that's what it costs. I mean, you need to sell quite a bit. I mean, this game being 60, 70, 80 million, right? You could sell half, half as much and be okay. I think the official sales for Ghost of Tsushima was 13. I think it sold 13 million. It always gets kind of messed up, right? When it goes on like PS Plus, it's a free game. I'm sure it's like 20, 25, 30 million that have experienced it, much like God of War, Horizon, Last of Us, all those, even Uncharted and stuff. But, when it comes to base sales, I think it sold 13 million units, which is incredible. That's a really high number. And it doesn't need to do, it's not 250 million. It doesn't need 10 million to break even. It needs maybe 4 or 5 million, to break even. So I think that is looking really good. And by the way, I just feel, well, kind of two things as part of the same thing. It actually is kind of surprising, especially the people, the amount of people that work at Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch, and I've said this constantly, they've given me historically some of my favorite games. Sly Cooper is my favorite gaming franchise. Obviously, they gave me that. Infamous, right? And then this. And it's they really are not all that big. That's a small... Insomniac is huge. Now, Insomniac kind of pumps out games at a better frequency than most studios, I think, on the planet. But, they have a lot of people. Naughty Dog is huge, I think, from what I understand. I think really all of them, I think Santa Monica is bigger than that. You'd have to go to really the house marks, I would say, are probably smaller than Sucker Punch, right? You got maybe Media Molecule would be similar size, but probably also smaller than this. So really, Sucker Punch finds itself in like tier 2. I imagine Gorilla is bigger. Like I said, Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, all those studios. I guess in my head, I always kind of think of Sucker Punch as like just part of that group. But in reality, they're not. They really are kind of a step below in terms of the size. Now, that doesn't mean in terms of the quality. I think that's almost more impressive. You know, you can understand, I guess, like why a Naughty Dog with that kind of fidelity, even just the fidelity, just how their games kind of act. You imagine like more people helps with that. But I mean, and this is kind of coming from recency bias of replaying Ghost of Tsushima, such a phenomenal game. And to know that only like 150, 160 people worked on that game, that's nuts, because I think similar games, not just PlayStation, by the way, Xbox studios can be massive. Ubisoft studios are like the biggest studios on the face of the earth for some reason. You know, to get an Assassin's Creed game that's made by 1,000 people, or 1,000 people touched the game at some point, versus 150, it is incredible that they're able to pull that off. So, you know, partially why I make a video like this is kind of just to say it out loud, to hopefully, honestly, because it's something I want like other studios to take note of. There's several things in the industry I wish the gaming industry in general would take note of, and they never seem to do it. But I think that's a good sign. I also think from like a PlayStation strategy side, it's good to have teams like this. And I completely forgot even about like the Astrobot team, right? Like what an incredibly talented, you know, group of people. I think that studio's under 100. I thought it was somewhere in like the 90 to 100 range. So, you know, this would hopefully, and I guess it does, because PlayStation has these studios, right? It's not like they're closing all of them, but you know, this is something I wish more people kind of did, or more studios, more publishers, where you should have a couple of these, right? You have studios that are smaller than Sucker Punch, you have some that are much bigger, and then you have like that Sucker Punch tier. And then I think that's how you can create some of these successful games that can make you a lot of money, because you're not asking for it to do, you know, incredible numbers just to break even. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.